Hello students, my name is Rochan Chandra. I am an MPhil candidate in the Department of Criminology, Raksha Shakti University, Ahmedabad, India. Today I will be talking to you on cyber sextortion. Let's first understand what is cyber sextortion first. Cyber sextortion is a tripartite process whereby perpetrators initiate contact with the victims by creating bogus profiles of attractive women on social networking sites, persuade the victims to engage into cyber sex, and surreptitiously record their sexually explicit images, videos or conversation without permission, and blackmail the victim into performing sexual favors or extort a sizable amount of money in exchange of the explicit content. However, the goals and interests of the perpetrators in reference to victims have changed radically in the past few years. Victims of sextortion are more prone to be blackmailed for money trade as opposed to the old classic trend that was more sexual in nature. It is believed that perpetrators are generally convince the unsuspected victim to move to a video supported platform as a means of bait so that they can record the sexually explicit videos of the victims and thereafter coerce them into paying money. Therefore, it seems reasonable to say that the patterns of victimization in sextortion is strongly linked to extorting money, more or less similar to lucrative business. However, luring the victim into cyber sex simply remains the means of achieving the ultimate goal. Now let's discuss the patterns of victimization involved in sextortion. The victimization of men by online sextortion is a threefold process. In the first stage, scammers typically create fake profiles of unsuspected attractive women on social networking sites in order to lure the chosen victims into chatting with them. One of the prime objects of the scammers during this process is to seize the attention of the chosen victims. No doubt, by posing as a flirtatious woman, affords them an unparalleled opportunity to invite and initiate chat with the chosen victim. However, once the contact is established, the scammer seeks to maintain a regular chat or contact with the victim as a grooming measure. Here, grooming is essentially done in order to convince the victim to engage in cyber sex. In the second stage, the scammers typically persuade the chosen victim to move to a platform with audio, text, image and video recording capabilities, example Skype and other chat applications with latest features. The underlying reason behind this move is to facilitate their participation into cyber sex, where cyber sex refers to the exposure of explicit images, videos and conversations through video chat. It is believed victims are often fascinated by the proposed move. They consider this move to be the most desired and favorable opportunity for sexual excitement and eventually succumb to the advances of scammers. However, once the victims consent for engaging in cyber sex and get started with the video chat, they are often unaware of the fact that chat session is being furtively recorded by the scammers without their permission. Here, the surreptitious recording of explicit images, videos and conversation forms the crux of the whole concept. By obtaining the image garnishing content, the scammers literally gain leverage over the victims and which allows them to coerce the chosen victim to dance at their tunes. However, in recent past, it is witnessed that scammers, in addition to recording the defaming content, also employ certain flagrant techniques in order to coerce the victim to comply with their wishes and demands and keep them in victimized position as long as possible. In the third stage, the scammers may pretend to have encountered a problem in transmission of voice and sound and suggest the victims to download an app to resolve or fix the problem. Left with no choice, the victims are literally coerced or forced to make use of the smartphones and Android devices. The gullible victims then download the suggest app thinking that it will repair the sound problem, notwithstanding the real potential of the app that stand in bright contrast to their expectations. The downloaded app acts as a data stealer, which is nothing but a malware disguised in form of app. This malware steals all the saved information of the contact stored in the victim's phone, sends it to the scammers. The scammers then use the obtained explicit content and list of contacts to blackmail the victim into paying substantial amount of money in exchange of the malicious content. In most of the cases, the scammers repeatedly demand money from the victims by threatening them to publicize their naked photos on YouTube and disseminate the same to all the victims' contact. Now let's compare the new modus operandi with old modus operandi. Previously, cyber criminals used to create fake profiles of attractive women on social networking sites, example Facebook. Then they invited the victim to chat, and in the next step, the cyber criminals somehow used to convince the victim to move their chat to a platform with video capabilities like Skype, so that they can have cyber sex. And in doing so, they recorded the explicit video of the victims. Once the video was in the hands of scammers, the victims were threatened that their videos will be publicly exposed if they do not pay a hefty sum. Clearly, the old modus operandi differed from new modus operandi in the sense that in the earlier, the scammers did not pretend to have audio problem while having video chat, and that way the chance of stealing the data from the victims' phones to blackmail them were negligible. Now let's see the impact of sextortion. The harm that many victims experience as a result of sextortion is indeed unimaginable, but it is also real. Victims of sextortion feel a justified sense of powerlessness and vulnerability. They are at the mercy of their hackers. Victims have described feelings like slave to the hackers during the sextortion scheme. Many victims spend every moment in fear of the next message demanding more compromising pictures or videos, living in perpetual anxiety of the risk of public exposure. With every new picture sent to the hacker is the worry that it isn't enough or that the hacker will never leave. Related is the feeling of helplessness, the ability to reach out to others about what is going on for fear of the attacker's retaliation. The days, weeks and months under the sextortionist's control can be an absolute nightmare where a victim is trapped and can't talk to anyone. Some victims also feel like they were being virtually raped. The traumatic effects on child victims can be particularly severe. Young victims are sometimes paralyzed by the potential social repercussions of sextortion. The nature of sextortion also makes for easy victim blaming. The victim, after all, took pictures. What are the implications in research for practice? As stated earlier, coexistence of three elements enables the commission of sexual extortion. Disrupting any one of these elements creates an effective obstacle for the abuser in the way of offending. Therefore, it is feasible and possible to develop specific prevention strategies and direct further research around each element. Cyberspace, according to the routine activity theory, is the combination of motivated offenders with suitable targets in absence of capable guardians, which gives rise to opportunities for offenses. Despite some views against applying this theory to cybercrime, it is considered that the theory might provide guidance in determining possible measures regarding the cyberspace elements in development of strategies for prevention of sexual extortion. In this respect, prevention of the encounters between the potential abusers, that is motivated offenders, and children or adult per se, suitable targets by enhancing the effectiveness of the existing capable guardians in cyberspace or creating new capable guardians is the first thing that comes to mind. However, it is not that easy to get satisfying results in practice. Currently, service providers report on sexual extortion incidents on their platforms to relevant law enforcement unit directly or indirectly. However, the fact that victimized children generally refrain from reporting SPs for socio-psychological reasons and that third persons rarely witness the private communication between the victim and the abuser causes sexual extortion to be underreported. Except for user reporting, the measures that can be taken by SPs for preventing sexual extortion or making it more visible have a limited field of application and rate of success. can be a capable guardian on cyberspace by monitoring the online activities of the children through installing certain applications on connected devices. So children, thus identifying a threat when it arises. The applications and software called monitoring tools allow surveillance of children on both computers and mobile devices. However, effectiveness of these solutions is closely related to the knowledge of children on information and communication technologies. It also requires a great deal of time and effort to track the daily online activities for parents. Consequently, it is considered that establishing a healthy communication channel with children, talking to them about the online threats that he or she may encounter, and creating a family environment where the child can tell his or her problems comfortably would be more helpful than the technological measures. In cyberspace, law enforcement can assume the role of culpable guardians to deter motivated offenders. Undercover agents may provide the information of an incident or possible abuser by sting operations. However, while the encounters between the victim and the abuser took place in a limited number of places such as chat rooms and a few popular instant messaging applications in the first years of the internet, such encounters may now occur in hundreds of environments such as social media websites, gaming sites, and mobile applications. Conducting sting operations to deter motivated offenders in such an extensive domain requires a large amount of human resources and time. Considering that law enforcement resources are already insufficient even for the victim identification in child abuse materials, it does not seem suitable to allocate these limited resources to a preventive measure with little or no potential for success. To sum it up, in the context of developing a crime prevention strategy, it is almost impossible to keep out children entirely from cyberspace and would do more harm than good even if it is done. On the other hand, keeping them clear of online threats with the efforts of service providers, parents, and law enforcement requires constant attention, time, and money, and does not guarantee success. For cyberspace elements of SCCC, that is not feasible to develop more effective preventive measures at the moment. The next is possession. Compared to the possible measures of cyberspace element, enhancing the knowledge of children about the benefits and risk brought by cyberspace and thus making them capable of protecting themselves is more feasible and less costly than keeping their devices and online activities constantly under control. To emphasize again, the abuser's possession of the sexual images of a child constitutes the backbone of sexual extortion, so much so that it is almost impossible for the child that does not produce his or her sexual image to be a victim of this offense. Therefore, raising the awareness of a child stands out for avoidance of future victimization. Thus, turning into a conscious user of the internet and devices, the child would be aware of the possibility that any personal information image that he or she shares online can be used maliciously. Law enforcement agencies in several countries are well aware of this fact and have conducted raising awareness of programs and prevent the online victimization of children. In the Safer Surfing program organized by UK Metropolitan Police, there is an interactive part that involves an officer posing as a child trying to arrange a meeting with the children on an online chat room. Again, in the UK, the projects Think You Know, organized by Child Exploitation and Child Protection Center, and Getting to Know It All, conducted by Child-Led International in collaboration with Virtual Global Task Force, Microsoft, and MSN, also aim to raise awareness on safe use of devices and the internet among young people. The program Keeping Ourselves Safe, conducted by the New Zealand Police Organization for an effective combat with sexual abuse of children, was developed to cover safe use of devices and the internet from the age of 8 to 10. Also, the NetSmart initiative that is constituted by NCMEC, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and Boys and Girls of America in the United States developed special programs for 3 groups of children: younger elementary school children, older elementary school children, and middle and high school students. Apart from these publicized examples, awareness raising activities such as organizing seminars in schools, broadcasting public service announcements on mass media, distributing brochures on basic internet security are carried out through regional or individual initiatives in many different countries. Understandably, every country evaluates a needs analysis and prioritization based on their respective socio-demographic structure, education system, and the level of crime that is reflected to statistics or perceived by the society. Therefore, preparation and implementation process of programs, identification of target groups, and the methods of transferring information to such groups vary among different countries and even across a given country. However, as far as sexual extortion is concerned, online environments, manipulative methods, and threats that take part in the commission of offense are almost universal and independent of the geographical location of parties involved. This gives rise to the opinion that similar preventive measures can be developed in the global scale. Therefore, the pros and cons of the program that have been carried out in different parts of the world and the lessons learned about such programs regarding both the executives of such programs and children should be identified. Thus, standardized awareness raising programs can be developed against sextortion. With minor modification, these programs can be integrated in socio-demographic structure of any country. In doing so, countries would be able to start implementing the standardized program by adding some socio-cultural adaptations rather than designing awareness raising campaigns from scratch. Considering the widely accepted importance of awareness raising programs on cybercrimes, this type of global combating strategy can pioneer similar activities in other domains. This kind of standardization might be conducted simultaneously worldwide under the leadership of Interpol or United Nations, or it might be started with the initiative of a limited number of countries that are party to the European Council's Convention on Cybercrime. Extortion: if the child feels the social support he or she would receive when the offense is reported or the abuser exudes his threat, that would outweigh the negative reaction and the child would refuse to comply with the abuser more easily. It has been shown that younger people get over bullying and other traumatic incidents with less psychological harm and experience milder effects of traumatic stress disorder in the presence of perceived or actual social support. For this reason, the positive perceptions that the family and the circle of friends would support the victim of sexual extortion does not only receive the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder after victimization, but it also reduces the perceived fear factor of the abuser's threat for the victim. Thus, fewer children will feel obliged to comply with the demands of the abuser. In an interesting case witnessed by the author, an adult male introduces himself as a girl to a young boy and makes him masturbate before the webcam. When the abuser blackmails the boy, he tells the incident to his elder brother, who threatens to find him and kill abuser if he publishes the obscene images of his brother online. Given a taste of his own medicine, the abuser terminates the contact with the child and does not execute his threats. This incident, which can also be explained by the privileged position of boys in the Turkish social structure, is an exceptional example of the victim's neutralization of threats when he finds himself in a supportive environment. However, if it was a girl or a child with homosexual tendencies involved in a similar incident, the possibility of seeking help or getting support from the close circle would be significantly lower. Making small modifications in the contents of preventive measures that are considered successful in fighting bullying, the message that child should be supported after victimized can be delivered in short term. In long term, developing socio-psychological dynamics to relieve the fear of children to experience a secondary victimization. establishing a more supportive social environment and facilitating pursuit of professional, social and legal support might eliminate the imbalance of power at the stage of extortion significantly. Due to persistence of victim blaming in sexual offences for a long time, implementation of these suggestions, which may look essay on paper, should be extended over years and realized by an arduous process that requires a rigorous implementation. Whether sexual is a new and specific type of online sexual abuse or a small part of current offending is of great importance in developing tailor-made solutions. For this reason, detailed interviews with convicted offenders might present more reliable findings on how decision-making process of offenders works at this stage. Demanding additional child abuse materials instead of an actual physical abuse, even in case of close distance to victim, needs to be studied. In particular, the abuser might demand extra shows from victims, since live interaction between each other is less risky or sexually more stimulating than physical abuse. Alternatively, it is possible that total control over victim makes the abuser feel psychologically superior, and this feeling of superiority might satisfy him or her so much that physical sexual abuse becomes needless or undesirable. Another area that has also needs special attention is why abuser rarely executes their threats and usually move to the next victim. It is important to know whether offenders consider their threats intimidating or bluffs. Possibly, abusers opt to abandon executing the threats after analyzing the cost and benefit of the action. Publishing the image of the child online, or any adult person for that example, sending them to family or friends of the child, would pose the risk of making his anonymous activities noticeable to law enforcement, thereby increasing the cost of execution of the threat. Except for psychological reasons such as holding a grudge against the victim or taking pleasure in harassing him or her, the abuser does not benefit from executing his threat. Refusal of compliance indicates that victim does not acknowledge the power of the abuser. Execution of the threat would not restore the imbalance of power in favor of the abuser that was balanced upon child's refusal to comply, and so it would not cause the child to submit the abuser. From the perspective of the abuser, since execution would not bring a power similar to the one he gained after possession of obscene materials, execution of the threat might become completely futile. It is also observed that some abusers victimize hundreds of children. Therefore, the forensic examination of these prolific offenders' conversation with victims might give a comprehensive account of why some few children comply with the demands and others do not. Anecdotal evidence suggests that refusal of the child to comply with the threats of the abusers can be considered a passive but effective method. Nevertheless, extra care must be taken for policy making based on similar results. If future studies confirm the best option for the victim is do not comply, terminate contact and forget about it, it might give rise to unintentional but harmful outcomes in the long run in combating this offense. Above all, this suggestion would make an already underreported offense even less visible. Abuser would run a much smaller risk of being caught even if they target more children in the end. Additionally, abusers will definitely adopt their modus operandi in regard to personal behavioral change of possible victims. They might start executing their threats against some of the children for the sake of earning reputation in order to increase the perceived power and intimidation of their threats. Consequently, it is crucial to understand the dynamic nature between abuser and victim before considering any change in policy making. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this lecture informative.